This young woman thinks she has just landed the perfect job working for a rich family. But she soon finds out that behind the luxury walls hides a terrifying truth, that the wife is dangerously unstable and the husband has his eyes on her. And although she initially gives in to his advances, what starts as an opportunity quickly turns into a nightmare when she realizes that she's become trapped in a place she may never escape from. The film opens in Long Island, where we see a young woman called Millie arriving at a luxurious home for a job interview. The homeowner, Nina, is immediately impressed by Millie's resume and even says she might be overqualified for a housemaid role, considering her college degree. That is when she tells her that the job involves cleaning, cooking, caring for her child, while living in the house. As she gives Millie a tour of the house, she quietly reveals that she's pregnant before asking Millie to keep it a secret for now. After the tour, Nina explains that she's still interviewing other candidates, but gives Millie some gas money, as she tells her that she has a good feeling about her. But as Millie drives away, she assumes Nina will never call back as she shares that everything on her resume is a lie, and that even her glasses are fake. That is when we see that in reality, Millie is living out of her car, and that she uses the gas stations and diner bathrooms to wash up every day. Just a few days later, the police found her sleeping in her car, and when they asked, she quickly told them that she was just resting after caring for her elderly mother, as she managed to talk her way out of trouble. Just then, she gets a call from Nina that she got the job. So, she immediately returns to the grand home and is greeted by the groundskeeper, Enzo, who opens the gate. Inside, she's shocked to find the front door open and the entire place in chaos. However, Nina soon rushes over and hugs her, as she notices that Millie only brought 2 bags. That is when Millie lies, as she tells her that the rest of her belongings are in storage. Nina then replies that she needs to work on a PDA speech before leaving Millie to start by cleaning. And by that evening, the house is spotless. That's when Nina's husband, Andrew, arrives home with their daughter Cece, and he's clearly surprised that Nina hired someone without consulting him, although he politely welcomes Millie. Later that night, Millie heads to her attic room where she'll be staying, and that is when she notices that there's no key for the door and there's only a tiny window in the room that won't open. Moments later, when Nina brings her food, Millie asks about fixing the window and getting a key for the room. So Nina promises to handle both, as she explains that the attic used to be Andrew's file storage, and she gives Millie a new phone with a credit card for groceries and running errands. By the next morning, when Millie wakes up, she struggles to open the attic door, which seems to be stuck, and this makes her panic a little. Eventually, when she pulls hard, it opens, and that is when she suddenly hears screaming downstairs. By the time she gets there, she is surprised to find Nina in a frenzy, throwing things around in the kitchen and demanding to know where her speech notes are. Fortunately, Andrew walks in just then, as Nina immediately starts to accuse Millie of stealing them before breaking down. However, Andrew tries to comfort her, as he tells her to take a shower and relax while he takes care of the meeting for her. But as she walks away, Nina coldly tells Millie to be more careful, as she blames her for ruining the day for her. And although Millie apologizes, she starts to wonder what mess she's gotten herself into. However, Andrew quietly apologizes for his wife's behavior, as he admitted that she's been acting strange lately. And as he walks away, Millie sees Enzo watching everything just outside the window. And later on, when Millie takes out the trash, Enzo approaches her and asks why she's there. Although she simply says that she got the job, he seems curious and wants to ask more, only to be cut off when he notices Nina watching them from a window. So, without another word, he returns to work, leaving Millie in an even more confused state. By the time she gets to cleaning the bathroom, Millie discovers a strange pellet in the toilet. Then suddenly, Nina appears behind her and opens up about how she's never fit in with the other school mothers, and feels constantly stressed going to school to pick Cece up. That is when Millie suggests that it might be her pregnancy hormones, but the comment clearly annoys Nina, who quickly sends her off to prepare dinner. But after making the food, things feel tense, and even Cece rudely tells Millie to rewash her glass, treating her like she's invisible. However, Andrew tries to be kind as he even invites Millie to sit and eat with them, but she declines and retreats to her attic room. There, she scrolls through the family's social media as we see that she has gradually started to develop an attraction toward Andrew. Moments later, he enters her room with a cupcake and suddenly, he leans in to kiss her. However, Millie suddenly jolts awake as she realizes that it was only a dream. But the feelings linger in her head, as she makes a mental note to herself to stay focused on her job. A few days later, Nina finally gives Millie a key to her room, just as Millie tells her of her plans to leave for her day off. But Nina insists that she needs her around and that she has to stay back. So an argument breaks out, but fortunately for Millie, Andrew steps in and allows Millie to go. That is when we learn why the day off matters to Millie, as we see her head to the Department of Social Services to meet her counselor. We eventually see that she's actually on parole, and that these meetings are mandatory for her as she provides her new contact information and hands over notes from her diary. Although the counselor is satisfied with her progress, she still warns her to try to hold on to this job, because losing it means serving the remaining 5 years of her sentence. On her way out of the department, Millie gets a call from Nina as she tells her to pick up Cece from her ballet. However, she hangs up before giving the address as Millie is left to scramble and search online to get to the school. But her mystery compounds further when she arrives and another mother tells her Cece was supposed to sleep over at her house with her daughter. Left in confusion, Millie insists that Nina sent her, only for the woman to call Nina and confirm the plan was already arranged, making it seem like Millie is the one causing unnecessary trouble. By the time she returns home, Nina is waiting and she even scolds her for creating a scene at the school, as she insists that she already mentioned the sleepover to her. Then, she introduces her to Andrew's mother, Evelyn, who has just arrived to visit them. The older woman immediately criticizes Millie's appearance before handing her a set of old ceramic dishes as a family heirloom for her son. That night, Millie finds it difficult to sleep, so she decides to go downstairs to watch TV. But moments later, Andrew joins her as he plays off her apologies for staying up late, and reassures her that they can share the same couch. They eventually strike small talks about family as Millie admits that she hasn't heard from hers in a long time. Andrew expresses sympathy and casually touches her leg before sharing that Nina's parents died in a mysterious house fire when she was still young, and that for a time, people suspected that Nina was responsible. As if on cue, Nina walks in and immediately tells Andrew that it is too late for TV. And just as he leaves, Nina immediately fires Millie, accusing her of trying to get close to her husband. The news comes as a shock to Millie, and in her desperation to keep the job, Millie starts to beg for another chance. Then, after a tense pause, Nina gives her one more week as a test, as she tells her to always dress properly and stay away from Andrew. The next day, Nina hosts some friends for tea, and as they talk, she mentions that she plans to visit a fertility specialist because she wants another child. Although the women seemed happy for her, when Nina steps out to take a call, Millie overhears the women gossiping as they talk about how Nina looks unkempt and even speculate that Andrew deserves better. They even make mention that the couple has a prenup, since Nina was poor before marriage, and that she once spent 9 months in a psychiatric ward. Millie quietly listens to everything just as the whispers stop instantly when Nina returns. That night, Millie writes in her diary, as she is now convinced that Nina has been lying about everything. She even starts to feel sorry for Andrew and decides that once she saves enough money, she'll leave the house. But her thoughts are interrupted when Nina suddenly bursts into the room and tells her she'll need to babysit Cece that Saturday while she and Andrew attend an important appointment. And by the time Saturday arrives, Millie quietly waits for the couple to leave before going to search the bathroom to check out Nina's medication. When she finds them, she quickly looks them up online and discovers that they were meds to treat psychosis. The realization scares her to death as she immediately calls a friend and starts making inquiries on how she can find a new job. But as she talks, Cece overhears the conversation and asks if she's leaving. But Millie quickly brushes it off and tells the young girl that she must have misunderstood her. Later that evening, while Cece is playing with her dollhouse, Millie sees that the girl has taken her troll doll, so she immediately scolds her. However, when Millie warns Cece to stay out of the attic, Cece replies that she needs to do the same, and before she can think about it, they suddenly hear loud noises echo through the house, and the couple start arguing. Moments later, Nina walks down the hallway in tears, followed by Andrew, who wants to speak to Millie in private. That is when he explains that Nina suffers from ovarian insufficiency, and that they've struggled for years to have a child, as he tells her that Cece is Nina's daughter from a previous relationship. Later that night, Millie is startled awake by shouting and crashing sounds downstairs. And as she checks, she realizes that the couple is arguing again. However, when she knocks on the bedroom door, Nina opens it, holding a shard of blood-stained mirror glass. Thinking that she must have hurt Andrew, Millie starts calling for him, only for Nina to laugh and mock the idea that Millie now sees her as crazy. Andrew eventually steps up to her and takes the shard before shutting the door, and leave Millie shaken once more by all that is happening before her. However, the next morning, Nina apologizes for lying about being pregnant as she tells her that she just wants a fresh start. She then gives Millie some of her old clothes as a peace offering, and soon after, Nina asks her to book musical tickets and a restaurant reservation for her, so she can make things up to Andrew, as she adds that Cece will stay at a friend's house so Millie can enjoy the day off. Just a few days later, while waiting for Cece at her ballet class, another nanny gossips about Nina to Millie as she tells her that Nina had once been committed to a psychiatric ward after trying to drown Cece and overdosing on her medication. The information shocks Millie, and when she returns home, Millie decides to ask Enzo about the family, but instead of answering, he only warns that she shouldn't be there. And before he can explain further, Nina interrupts and orders Millie not to speak with him again. Then Nina asks about an envelope she had seen that contained tickets and reservations. That is when Millie reminds her that she had requested them, only for Nina to deny doing such, as she claims that she and Cece will be traveling to DC that Saturday. And since the bookings aren't refundable, she simply tells Millie that she'll deduct the cost from her salary. A back-and-front argument eventually follows until Andrew steps in and assures Millie that she won't pay anything, as he even promises to return the tickets and get a refund. By Saturday, after Nina and Cece leave the house, Andrew unexpectedly sees Millie stepping out of the bathroom in her towels, and he quickly turns away. Then later on, he apologizes to Millie before telling her that he couldn't cancel the tickets, as he offers them to her instead. However, Millie declines as she tells him that she has no one to go with. After hearing this, an idea quickly forms in Andrew's head as he suggests that they attend together since he'll be home alone. Millie eventually agrees as she wears one of Nina's old dresses, and the two spend a surprisingly wonderful evening at the theater. Afterward, they visit the restaurant, and during dinner, Andrew confesses that his marriage is falling apart as he tells her that his wife has become completely different from who he used to know. However, Millie tries to reassure him that he's not the problem, just as the music begins to play in the background. Andrew eventually invites her for a dance, as they spend the evening laughing and enjoying each other's company. In the end, they both had too much to drink, so they decided to stay at a hotel. Although they take separate rooms, as soon as Millie enters her room and checks her phone, she sees that her notification is flooded with messages from Nina, including one that tells her that she's been fired. This immediately panicked Millie as she ran to Andrew for help. He eventually reassures her that he'll take care of everything and that she won't lose the job, but in the heat of their emotions, he kisses her. One thing leads to another, and the two eventually get intimate and spend the night together. The next morning, they agree to keep everything a secret and promise each other that it won't happen again. But once they return home, and they see that Nina is not back, Andrew kisses her again, and they fall right back into the affair. Later that day, Nina returns to find Millie waiting with lunch already prepared for them. That is when Nina once again casually apologizes for the texts, before she suddenly drops a shocking news that she knows that Millie spent 10 years in prison. The piece of information leaves Andrew stunned, although he chose to remain silent about it. Nina then sends Millie out for groceries, and she even insists that she use her car because Millie's old one makes the family look bad. But while she is at the store, another nanny sees her phone and then tells her about how some bosses often use their nannies' phones to control their employees. That's when it hits Millie that Nina might actually already know about the affair. So, she decides to quickly hurry up and head home. But just as she loads the groceries into the car, police suddenly surround her and arrest her for driving a stolen car. Millie is left in shock as she tries to explain the situation, and thankfully, Andrew arrives just in time to clear up the misunderstanding. On the drive home, Millie apologizes to Andrew for hiding her past, but Andrew tells her that it doesn't matter. When they arrive back at the house, that is when Nina reveals that she knows everything about their relationship and even starts accusing Millie of stealing her clothes. Her irritating behavior finally makes Andrew explode as he yells at Nina to leave his house. And to make matters worse, Millie asks if she should help her pack, so Nina slaps her before storming off, as she eventually breaks down in her car. Afterward, Andrew tries to comfort Millie as he tends to her injury and tells her that she could become the new lady of the house. And over the next few days, the two grow even closer as they spend nearly all their time together and further deepen their affair. But one morning, as Millie is preparing breakfast using Evelyn's heirloom china, she suddenly drops it when she sees Enzo staring at her through the window. Andrew rushes in after hearing the crash, and by the time Millie explains what had happened, Andrew immediately fires Enzo. He then tells her to bag up the broken china, as he claims that he knows someone who can fix it. However, by the next day when he sees the bag with the broken china, he scolds her for not washing the pieces first. Millie apologizes and the two eventually go up to the attic as they share a drink, and the night turns intimate again. But when Millie wakes up, she finds that the room is empty. And when she tries to leave, she discovers that the door is locked. When she tries to call out, she hears Andrew's voice in the hallway, as he calmly tells her she isn't allowed to come out yet, for the fact that she disobeyed his instructions to watch the plate. That is when we see what really happened to Nina when she left the house. As we see her crying in her car, then suddenly, she starts laughing as she drives off to check into a hotel and celebrates her freedom, drinking heavily and even burning Andrew's photo. Then she begins writing a letter to Cece, to finally tell her the truth. That is when we learn that Nina never really started the fire that killed her parents, but losing them left deep trauma. So, she grew up moving between foster homes before eventually earning a scholarship to law school. But while there, she had an affair with a married professor and became pregnant. The man eventually abandoned her, leaving Nina to raise the child alone as a single mother. She eventually starts working at one of the big law firms, and that is where she met Andrew, and the two connected instantly. And after just 6 weeks of dating, they got married and they moved into a house Andrew had originally designed for his previous fiancée, a warning sign Nina ignored. She always tried to please him, as she even dyed her hair blonde because he asked her to, although he continues to constantly check for visible roots. Then one day, while she was busy taking care of Cece, Nina missed her salon appointment, and by the time Andrew noticed her roots, he calmly told her to go to the attic and retrieve some files for him. But once she was inside searching, he locked the door. Then from the outside, Andrew scolded her for not maintaining her hair before sliding an envelope under the door as he ordered her to pull out 100 strands of hair from her scalp and place them inside. Even though Nina refused at first, when she was trapped for days with just water, she was forced to endure the humiliation as she eventually pulled out the hairs and placed them in the envelope. But when Andrew checked, he found one strand without a follicle, and he forced her to start all over again. After completing the task a second time, Andrew finally opens the door and gives her water before calmly claiming that he did everything for her own good. But Nina quickly rushed out, desperate to find her daughter. However, she soon began to feel dizzy, and that is when she realized that the water had been tampered with. By the time she eventually woke up, she found Cece in the bathtub, almost drowning. And when Nina tried to save her, the police stormed inside the house and pulled her away. She is accused of being mentally unstable, and when Andrew arrives shortly after, he pretends to be a devastated father while secretly relishing her arrest. For the next 9 months, Nina was locked in a psychiatric hospital where she kept trying to tell doctors the truth about Andrew, but he had already erased every trace of evidence. No one believed her until she was forced to confess to harming Cece, which eventually convinced the doctors she was recovering, and she was finally released. For years afterward, Nina tried to play the role of the perfect wife while Andrew continued to manipulate her behind the scenes. He wanted a child of his own, but Nina secretly got an intrauterine device and even bribed a doctor to declare her infertile. And even at this, whenever she made the smallest mistake, Andrew locked her back in the attic as punishment. The only person who believed her was Enzo, who tried to help her escape. But when Andrew had seen them together, Nina was sent back to the institution, and after her release, Enzo tried again, as he told her that he had already lost a sister to a man like Andrew. But this time around, Nina told him to stay out of it, because she had a plan. She decided to bring another woman into the house, someone Andrew would fall for, and that's why she hired Millie, who is a blonde, vulnerable, and desperate. But when Nina discovered Millie had been imprisoned for murder, her plan had shifted. Meanwhile, back in the present, we see Nina picking Cece up from school, as she tells her about her plan to escape. But as they talk, Cece suggests that they should bring Millie along. At about that time back at Andrew's house, we see Andrew sliding a shard of the broken china under the attic door, as he gives Millie instructions to carve 21 deep lines into her stomach, each for the broken piece, and that she will be in the attic until she does it. Millie initially refuses just like Nina did, but as time passes and no one comes to save her, she is forced to drift into memories of her past. That is when we learn about the moment that changed her life, when she had returned to her high school dorm and found a classmate assaulting her roommate. In her panic, Millie had grabbed a heavy decoration and struck him repeatedly until he died. But since the boy came from a powerful family, instead of making it a case of self-defense, Millie was convicted of murder. Back in the attic, Millie tries once more to find a way out as she searches the room, only to find a hidden cheese knife. With no way out, she proceeds to painfully carve the lines Andrew had demanded, and by the time she calls for him, he doesn't return until the next morning. When he is satisfied with what she did, he gently promises her of a new future with him. However, as he continues to speak, Millie suddenly strikes out, stabbing him in the neck with the knife, then tries to escape. But Andrew fights back and drags her back inside, only for Millie to kick him away and manages to lock him inside the attic instead. Now weak and shaken, she goes downstairs and eats something in the kitchen. And as she sits with Andrew's phone, she sees a message from Evelyn, his mother, asking if he's finalized the divorce yet. The realization fuels her anger as she realizes that the mother is in on the whole matter. So Millie gathers tools and returns to the attic door. And as Andrew starts pleading from the inside, Millie slides a plier under the door and then demands that he pull out his front tooth. When he refuses, she starts smashing the rest of Evelyn's heirloom china as Andrew keeps begging and even offers her any amount of money she wants. But Millie isn't swayed as she even proceeds to pour gasoline on the floor just as she reminds him that she has already gone to prison for murder, so this won't be new to her. By the time she lights a match, Andrew finally breaks as he is forced to do exactly what she asked, and Millie watches through the house security feed on his phone. After he slides the tooth under the door, Millie picks it up and coldly tells him she'll return in the morning to consider his options. That night, she falls asleep in front of the TV. In the meantime, we see that Nina has returned to the house to try to rescue Millie, and when she notices a light through the attic window, She thinks that Millie is still the one who is trapped inside, as she quietly goes inside the house. At that same time, Millie wakes up and sees everything unfolding through the camera. She quickly runs upstairs, arriving just as Nina opens the attic door, only for Andrew to burst out and push Nina down the stairs. However, Millie manages to grab a vase and smashes it over Andrew's head, and this triggers a chaotic chase through the house. By the time he catches her and tries to strangle her, she bites his arm and breaks free, as she manages to land several blows before running again. Andrew searches for her, but instead finds Nina as he starts to apologize again, and tries to manipulate her once more. However, Nina calls him a monster and this enrages him as he lunges forward, only for Millie to appear behind him and push him over the railing. He crashes down the staircase until he fatally hits his head and back. The two women stood still for a while, until Nina drops a light bulb beside him to stage it as an accident. And although Millie doubts if anyone will believe it, Nina urges her to leave everything to her as she tells Millie to stay away for a while. Then, Nina calls Enzo to clean up. By the time the police arrive, Nina plays the grieving widow, and although the investigating officer notices a stab wound on Andrew's neck, she eventually tells Nina that Andrew's former fiancée was her sister, whose life was ruined by him. So, she agrees to rule the death as an accident. The next day at the funeral, Evelyn criticizes Nina's appearance and wonders what happened to Andrew's missing tooth. But Nina simply plays it off, and that is when she notices that Millie is around too. When the two greet, Nina eventually hands her a large check, as she tells her that she deserves a chance to start over. And just as the movie ends, we see Millie attend another job interview with a wealthy woman, carrying Nina's recommendation letter. When the woman hints that her husband may be abusive, Millie knows exactly why Nina recommended her, as she calmly assures the woman that she will be of help. And that is the recap of the movie, The Housemaid. If you love this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and also leave a comment for us. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.